Hi YouTube, it's Kathy and this is my weekly entertainment wrap-up for January 17th through 23rd. This week I had one DNF, I read 4 books, I watched 5 shows, I watched 3 movies, and I listened to 2 books. The book that I DNF'd this week was Teaching a Stone to Talk. This was a book that I picked up for the Rent Readathon, and all of the other physical books that I've read this week were for the Rent Readathon as well. This is a book of essays, and I thought that I would get really into at least the first one because it's about a trip to go see a total eclipse, and I've gone on a road trip to go see a total eclipse. However, the writing just didn't really work for me. It meandered a lot. It seemed to be talking about 2 different things that were seemingly unrelated in an essay, but it never like brought them together. And I just ended up giving up because life's too short. I wanted to read something I was more excited about. The first book I actually completed this week was Spring Rain. This is a graphic novel memoir about the author's time in Beirut in 2005. He went there for a semester, he met a bunch of people, he had his first queer experience as well as a mental breakdown. It's really weird for me to try to assign like a star value to a memoir like this just because it's somebody's lived experience. But what I can say about it is I did learn a little bit about that area and the culture and what it would have been like back in 2005. The next book I read this week was Miss Meteor by Anna-Marie McLemore and Tehlor K. Mejia. I absolutely love this. I actually got this as a book club subscription as a way of trying it out and being a rep for them, and that was back in, I believe, the beginning of December, and I basically went, I don't have time to read this now, so I'm going to have to read it in January, which meant that I had to turn the unboxing that I was doing into a reading vlog, which you will be getting this week. This book is about 2 ex-best friends, one who only has a little bit more time left on Earth because she's returning to Stardust because she came from a meteor, which is actually what her town in New Mexico is named after, Meteor or Meteorite, depending on who you talk to. And with that time, she wants to enter the Miss Meteor beauty pageant because she's always wanted to enter it. However, she was bullied in her past and that kind of put her down. Ex-best friend, on the other hand, is also very bullied, especially because she is pansexual, and the people around her don't know that. They've just been teasing her since the 4th grade about the fact that she had a crush on a girl, and she hasn't had the strength to come clean about, yes, she likes everyone, or, you know, has the capacity to like everyone. Obviously doesn't like everyone, that's not what that means. She, however, wants to teach a lesson to one of her bullies by making sure that she doesn't win the Miss Meteor pageant by helping her ex-best friend win the Miss Meteor pageant. I really love this. We got queer rep, we got trans rep, we had these 2 very cute romances that weren't the center of attention. I just really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed that this was a story about these friends coming back together. Next I read One True Loves by Taylor Jenkins Reid. The setup for this book is that the protagonist was married, however her husband disappeared in a helicopter crash, and it's many years later and she's just gotten engaged to somebody else, and then her husband shows back up. This, of course, is all about who is she going to end up with in the end. Is it going to be her husband? Is it going to be her new fiance? I really enjoyed this because it really kept you in the middle of the emotions and the tension of this impossible situation, and you got to fall in love with each of these men with her because you got to see their relationships through different points in time, and you got to see them falling in love with each other, and I really enjoyed that. I also thought that her reasons for choosing who she chose were incredibly solid. This was basically a big thought experiment, and I just very much enjoyed how it played out. I know that some people have a problem with the fact that once she decides who she's going to be with, she still spends the night with the other one as kind of a goodbye. I don't have a problem with that because this is such an impossible situation. There is this whole wanting to say goodbye properly that I can understand. However, I could see how that would be a trigger warning for cheating, even though it's in this really weird nebulous area, so just know that going in if that is a concern for you. Finally, this week I also read The Wicker King by Ancrum, and I did not enjoy this one as much as the other book that I've read by this author, which is The Weight of the Stars. This one has an interesting gimmick where when you start out the pages are fairly blank but with, you know, text on them obviously, and as you go the pages at the margins become darker and darker and darker as these characters are kind of descending into mental health crises. I found that gimmick interesting, but I think that the chapters were just too short for me and we didn't really get a big flow of what was actually going on, and when things were being described on the page I couldn't really picture them. Although I ended up enjoying my time with the book, it's definitely not a favorite for me. This book is about 2 boys that grew up knowing each other. They are in a very codependent relationship that is quasi-sexual, but it's never sexual on the page. and one of them has hallucinations of another world that is kind of layered on top of our world, and it goes from there. Again, an interesting thought experiment, but it didn't quite work for me personally. On to what I watched this week. We watched the entire first season of The Umbrella Academy, which was really good. I read all the comics, although I did read them kind of spaced out, so by the time I got to the second comic I couldn't remember who people were, because not only do the central characters have names, they have numbers, and then they have superhero names, and I couldn't remember who was who and had what power and that type of thing. So I knew that going into this I was probably going to enjoy this medium more because I was going to be able to connect with the characters more in this medium than I did just drawn on the page. I was correct, and I really did enjoy this. I also forgot a lot of what happened in the comics, so it was interesting to kind of remember it as it was happening on the screen. The setup for this series is one day 49 women worldwide just spontaneously gave birth, and it's thought that these children had some form of powers, and this scientist managed to buy 7 of them from their families and raise them as his own children. He did a terrible job of doing that. He was not a great father figure, and was basically trying to figure out what their powers were and then use them as superheroes. However, number 7 ended up not having any powers, so she was looked down upon all throughout childhood, and it goes from there. I really enjoyed this. The cast is amazing. I did not realize that number 4, aka Klaus, is the same guy that played Nathan in Misfits, which, if I hadn't looked it up, I wouldn't have clocked it, because he, 1, is an American in this, and 2, he looks different. Obviously, it's been some time, and obviously his character would be different, but I just really like this actor. And then, of course, the day after Elliot Page came out as being trans, all of the credits for Elliot's movies and shows were changed on Netflix to respect his actual name, which is just amazing. It was honestly one of the first things I noticed because it was one of the first names to come up in the credits of the first episode. Next, we watched a few very random episodes of Bones. This is kind of the show that we are starting to just put on when we have a little bit of time, like we just want to eat a meal and watch a show, but we don't want to get super invested in things. So we watched a 2-parter where they were in London for reasons, and we watched another one where Angela's husband showed up and that whole situation was worked out, and it's just a series that it's fun to go back to and just look at Sweets and the faces he's making sometimes. It's just very entertaining. You could probably also guess that I also watched the next episode of the 2nd season of RuPaul's Drag Race UK because I watched that on Thursdays. I continue to be entertained by these queens. I feel like the caliber of the challenges is just raised every season that this show is on, so having to be singing live in a musical in the 2nd episode of a show is just wow. And we have some definite competition on this show. Similarly, I watched the 4th episode of the 13th season of RuPaul's Drag Race, the original, and we have finally started voting people off. I was very happy with who went home, because if the other person went home, I would probably not really enjoy watching the rest of the season. I mean, I would still watch it, but I would be very annoyed that that contestant was not there because she is really good. And the other girl just was not a great lip syncer and also was a terrible actress, so there's that. We also watched the first half of the 3rd season of HarmonQuest, and this was so much fun. We got to see a returning character, we got to see Dan Harmon play a couple of characters because of reasons that I can't really say because of spoilers, but the 2nd character was interesting, I can definitely say that. And I'm seriously gonna be bummed out when we get to the end of the season because I don't know if a 4th season is happening. If you haven't heard me talk about it before, this is where a few people sit down and play Pathfinder, which is a role-playing game similar to Dungeons & Dragons, and they have a special guest every episode, and half of the show is animated, so you're not just watching them play Pathfinder, you are actually watching their animated characters play Pathfinder. It is so good. As for the movies we watched this week, for nostalgia, we watched Mean Girls, which I haven't watched in a very long time, and of course that was fun. I then had to show my roommates that the guy that played Damien also did a Sam Smith cover a while ago, and that was fun to revisit because it's also been a very long time since that happened. We were also duped into watching Primer, which is a terribly written movie. It's a time travel movie. That's basically all you need to know about it, besides I don't think any woman was ever talked to in the production of making this film because it treats women characters not great. There's only like 2 of them and they serve no point in the plot, and it's bad. It's just not a great movie. It's just really, really not good. As a palate cleanser, we watched another movie that I haven't seen since about my childhood, which is Boondock Saints. I couldn't really remember what this was about besides I knew that Norman Reedus was in it. I forgot that Willem Dafoe was in it. I was glad to see him again, although there's some questionable things that happened with his character in this movie. It's all about revenge, basically. These couple of brothers who are just trying to clean up their streets of their community. Obviously, they've got a lot of white privilege in doing that, but it's an entertaining action flick if you can look past all of the things that haven't aged super well. Also, at the very, very beginning of it, the woman that plays Coach Beast on Glee is in it for like a scene, which was really entertaining to see her again. I also wanted to mention, even though I didn't say it in my introduction when I was saying how many things I read, watched, and listened to, but I did watch a 2008 production of the stage play for Rent, which was excellent. I have seen it done on stage before, although it was over a decade ago, so it was quite a while ago. Obviously, I've also seen the movie, which was also a very, very long time ago, but it was nice to go back to the stage production because it is a little bit different than the movie. I like both. I know that that's a big thing, but I did really enjoy rewatching it as part of the Rent Readathon, just to sit down, hear all the songs again, see it with almost a completely different cast to me. There was only one person in this who is also cast in the movie, at least in a main role. And I got to see the woman who plays Angelica Schuyler play Mimi, which was amazing. On to the books I listened to this week, the first one being When No One Is Watching by Alyssa Cole. This is a thriller, and this was super scary at points. I've seen a lot of people criticizing it for not being that scary, and I just have to wonder if these people were actually reading the same book as me. For example, mini spoiler, you get to the 5th chapter and one of the characters is in an Uber by herself, and the guy starts being all white supremacist, and it seems like he might take her down an alley and kill her. That's terrifying. This is about Sydney, who's returned to her family home in Brooklyn after getting a divorce from her husband, who now lives in Seattle. Her mom is sick, so it's to her to kind of look after all the bills and that type of thing. And she's basically just there being more and more beat down about how white people are coming into the neighborhood, gentrifying it. There's even a tour in her neighborhood that she goes on, and the tour only talks about the white people that used to live in the neighborhood, even though it's a historically black neighborhood, so she decides to make her own tour. Our second perspective is Theo, who has moved in across the street with his girlfriend, who is on kind of a weird relationship thing with. She recently cheated and they're sort of trying to work it out, but he's been relocated to the attic. But both of their names are on the deed. He put all of the money he had into the house, even though she could have just paid for it by herself. So he's kind of stuck in this situation because he owns property with her. Where's he gonna go? He doesn't have any money. I originally thought that he was going to end up being a total creep because there are scenes where he is looking out his window and he can see Sydney, and that creeped me out a little bit. He does end up being more of a character that Sydney comes to trust and then not. So I was glad that half the perspective wasn't the killer or the bad guy type of thing, but I was also glad that Sydney was wary of him because there were aspects of him that one should be wary of. Overall, this had me on the edge of my seat, and I mean that quite literally because I only listen to my audiobooks now when I'm on an exercise bike, and it does have a full seat and I do have to sit at the edge of it because I have very short legs, which is one of the reasons why I recently solicited your audiobook recommendations, just so I can make sure to keep sitting on my exercise bike every day. So I will put that short down below if you want to add to the suggestions. The other audiobook I listened to this week was Between the World and Me by Ta-Nehisi Coates. This is nonfiction that is written to Ta-Nehisi Coates' son about his experience growing up black in the world and what he wants his son to know about that experience and how to move forward being a black boy and then man in the world. I said this before and I'll say it again, I really enjoy seeing people's lived experiences when it is something that they have already put out in the world. So they've already written it down, they've already given it to the world as a resource, so I love being able to just pick them up and experience through their eyes what their life has been like. If this doesn't sound like your lived experience, then I highly suggest that you pick up this book because it is excellently written and it is also excellently narrated by the author. That's it for this week. If you've read, watched, or listened to any of these, let me know about it down below. Also, if you participated in the Rent Readathon, please let me know about it. Please let me know how it went for you, and also if you do any wrap-ups or vlogs or anything like that, please let me know about them so I can watch them. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up because that that really helps me out. Some people have asked if there's a way to financially support this channel, so I set up a Ko-fi account, which is like a digital tipping service. The link for that is down below, as well as the link to my PayPal and my Amazon wishlist in case you would like to buy me a book. You can like and share this as you see fit, and I will see you very soon. Bye!